some questions for you because I know you have a lot of good information. And the first question I'd like to ask you is about your connection to procurement, which is also the title of this podcast. So how did procurement find you?
Well, and hi, Susan. Hello, everyone. It's a good question because it didn't. So I've been asked that question before. I'm one of the few people, I think, that actually went out and found procurement. So I didn't fall into procurement.
Wow.
It was a conscious choice to go into procurement for a number of reasons. I guess my father being a salesman, and complaining about buyers, made me think, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? That's a way to really antagonize your father, is to go into the profession that he doesn't that he talks about a little bit. So that was a reason as well. And during sort of not university, during a college course that I was doing, there was some work experience that they did as part of it, and you kind of went through all the different parts of a retail organization, and part of that was actually working in the procurement function, purchasing as it was called,
as it was back
in
then.
the 1980s when I started, and I really enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of interesting things there, and working in a warehouse, and understanding the goods in, the goods out procedure, and seeing how they reordered things, and seeing how they brought stock in and then got it ready for sale and what have you. All of that stuff from the broader sort of procurement family, if you like, made me go, I think this is the profession that I really want to go into. And so I found a role in procurement with the National Health Service, and it went from there.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it is exciting because, I think people are starting to find procurement themselves more often now, because people are starting to know about it, and it is seen more as a real profession. But not that long ago when it was, purchasing, I think it's probably right that procurement did find a lot of people later, but you are one of the originals. So that is cool.
Yeah. Well, we try and be different, right? That's a motto. Try and be different.
Absolutely. So I noticed, that your catchphrase is procurement can save the world, which I absolutely love. I want to adopt that myself. But can you tell me more about that, how that came about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think procurement done well can impact so many different things of an organization, of public sector, of therefore people's life. I think procurement done badly can also save the world, but for completely different reasons, right?
Yeah, right.
So it can be, and this is part of something that I feel very passionate about. Procurement is so much more than just saving money, just cost savings. It can fundamentally change the nature of what a market looks like. It can understand in a monopoly or a duopoly or an oligopoly what the impacts are of that, and therefore what's needed to get done to change that. It can look at the way that it sources and try and drive diversity in its sourcing. It can impact and affect organizational strategy about some of the things that they choose to buy, by bringing knowledge, by bringing awareness, by bringing light, if you like, in terms of the decisions that are about to be made. So, one of the things that I talk about and used to talk a lot about in training was being aware of the impact of the decision you're about to make before you make it, and start to scenario plan some of those things. And what I think has become evident over the last 3 or 4 years is that the lack of scenario planning has massively impacted organizations. They haven't done the what if analysis. There was always another supplier. There was always another choice until there isn't. Yeah. And so some of the research that I've been conducting now actually clearly identifies that some of the drivers that organizations are looking for is to increase scenario planning. Well, who's better to do that? Who can really impact the scenario planning by accessing those external markets and making decisions and impacting decisions around whether or not you outsource something, you bring it in-house. Yeah. For instance, if you want to stimulate some economy right now, one of the things that many governments do, obviously, is they build infrastructure. That's a way that pretty much every country around the world, you do big infrastructure projects. And Australia's no different. I live in Victoria. It's the big build. There's more things being built in this country, in this state, than you can possibly imagine. But the problem that you got then is that has a massive impact on all of the different suppliers and sub-suppliers and sub-sub-suppliers and associated suppliers of these things that happen. And so you can actually turn around now and go, well, there are pockets in here that we're just not going to be able to get supply of. So how do we think differently? Well, one of the ways to think differently is to insource and bring apprenticeships and do all sorts of weird and wonderful things that are going to solve that problem. And that's the reason why I think that procurement can save the world, because it really can impact economies, and it touches more parts of any organization of every organization and any organization, probably save for IT than any other part of a business, because everybody needs something to buy. And everybody needs to understand external supply markets. And that's why I think procurement can really impact and change the world and save the world, because it can start to drive a broader agenda that people need to consider by showing people what those broader agendas can be.
Yeah, no, that's really good, because certainly that plays into the whole ESG, flavor of the moment, which hopefully will continue on, forever. But yeah, also that whole thing about, as you said, onshoring and reshoring and training up our own people, which for me here in Australia, that's always been one of the things that upsets me, that we always bring in, and here we are, two people not originally from Australia, but, bringing in people from overseas to do jobs, that people in Australia trained up could easily do. But yeah, no, that's thank you for sharing that. I think that is a mantra that we can all look at. Maybe I'll have my next podcast called Procurement Can Save the World. Thank you. I might pinch that from you.
The one that I had before was Procurement is Life, which I stole outrageously from Ted Lasso. So
okay.
Not procurement is life, it was football is life. But
right. But yeah, there you go. Well, look, very few people, can I say, have really original thoughts. We do like to steal from one another. So, but yes. I appreciate that thought, procurement can save the world, and I am going to steal it. Now, I know you talked about how you found, how you decided to go into procurement. But I guess, did you want to share, a few of the highlights of your career trajectory so far?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the cool thing is, as hopefully the people listening will know a little bit about me, and certainly gather from the accent. I've worked in lots of different continents, and seeing the differences is always interesting. So, growing up in England and starting my procurement career in England, I guess one of the big highlights for me in that one was Oyster Card. So I was the lead procurement guy for the Oyster Card transformation that took it from what we call as a transport ticket to essentially as a cash replacement system. In many ways, it was the forerunner of what we have now as the payless the touchless transactions.
Yeah.
And so being exposed to that business strategy, in terms of what the goals were behind it, being exposed to essentially the world of corporate finance and the world of technology. Can honestly say that was a 2-year project that I kind of worked on, and I think you learned something every day. I think it massively impacted the way that I did conduct future market interactions. I'm not going to say the word tender. I'm not going to say the word RFP, because one of the reasons is that the future market interactions never involve an RFP. So this was a government piece of legislation. A government piece of procurement transaction, and we issued no tender documents.
All right. Because you were looking for someone innovative. Was that you're looking for a new arrangement?
Exactly. If you want to stifle innovation, send out a tender.
Sadly, but.
And so we basically, had just held constant competitive dialogues, and it was just recognizing that we can achieve the outcomes that we want to achieve without being stuck in issuing a document and getting someone to issue a document to our requirements. Because again, part of this is, if we're looking for innovation, surely part of the evaluation should be how innovative their responses are. If you're looking for an indicator as to how innovative this organization is, how creative this organization is, then getting them to fill a 20-page document in the same way as everybody else to make it easier for you, to me, just strike, you don't want to do that. And the reality is, if that's how we're going to make a decision, there's technology that does that. We don't need human interaction. That's kind of one of the things that I learned from that. So that was a highlight. Coming to Australia and working as a consultant for a period of time was a highlight, because again, you saw so many different organizations and so many different things that they were doing, and again, recognizing that this cookie cutter singular approach to things, you need to have some nuance within these things, and recognizing that people think differently is good. And then I'd say the other part that I always really enjoyed was the delivering of the learning, delivering of the training. We obviously
that's where we met, of course, Gordon. So yeah.
So delivering all those training, touching or being able to influence so many people at a stage of their career where they're looking to do things fun and interesting in procurement, and to see so many of them go on to lead procurement functions, and to hear them say some of the things that I was talking about in these training programs. It is fantastic to kind of see all those things and people reaching back out, and even if it is just to reiterate some of the very, very poor jokes that they would have heard and experienced on those courses.
We loved your jokes, Gordon.
But I think it was good. It's really nice to always see that this constancy of people in procurement leadership roles that I see now that 8-9 years ago at the beginning of their career, and you see how they move and you see them go. That is something that I think is a constant source of enjoyment for me, is to see the success of other people.
Yeah, the fruits of that and of them and your involvement. So no, that's great. And that kind of leads me to one of my next questions, which, I met you on a category management course, seems like years ago now, and I certainly learned heaps in that course, and it was, and now it seems like category management is supposedly what everybody does, although I would argue that a lot of times it's really just strategic sourcing. But anyway, leaving that where I found it, I just going to say that I know one of your recent research topics has been on the subject of the evolution of spend management. And I'd love to hear more about that, particularly around why you're now looking at the concept of spend management as opposed to procurement or category management or something else.
And okay, so I think the reason why we would call it spend management is similar to what you just said, actually, Susan, is that I think the connotation of procurement is that it's about sourcing. It's interesting being in a global role and being exposed to different parts of the world. It's always interesting to hear the terminology that gets used. And so in the US, for instance, procurement is basically what we would call P2P.
Right. Okay.
And
whereas here in Australia, it's sourcing, isn't it? Yeah, that's interesting.
And so sourcing is sourcing, and procurement is purchase to pay. That's basically what they look at, which is interesting. And of course, growing up in England, P2P would still be what we would call purchasing. That's one of my first jobs in procurement, was in purchasing, converting requisitions to purchase orders through using a catalogue, and all those things that we still do, except that it took 6 weeks in 1988, 89, and it hopefully can take less than 6 hours in 2023.
Absolutely. Like you don't need those big books of catalogs anymore, or any of that stuff. So it's all digitized. Yeah.
So the reason why I say spend management is because, and the reason why we say within SAP spend management is because it's broader than just purchasing or procurement. It's broader than just sourcing. It's broader than just category management. It's broader than just inventory management. It's broader than just invoice management. It's broader than just expense management. All of these different parts make up spend management. When you're thinking about total spend, you have to think about where all of the spend comes from. And the first thing I'd say is, being a procurement practitioner, we don't cover all the spend.
No.
There's chunks of spend out there that we don't cover. But if you want to take a holistic view to understand where the organization is spending money, you need to have a total spend piece rather than a total procurement piece.
Yeah,
so that would be something that I would say is be really cognizant of all the spend. Not that we have to control or manage all the spend, but we have to be aware of all of the spend, so we know what the trends are within the organization. If we're truly to align, we really need to understand that. I think that's the first piece as to why spend management. And the second bit I'd say is exactly what you were saying, that I think category management done well transforms organizations and transforms functions. The risk of category management is that essentially what it is currently in large parts of organizations, that it is actually category segmentation. It's a way to segment spend into different categories and allocate resources to it. And the reality is 90% of the time it ends up in a sourcing exercise.
Yeah, 100%.
I think if procurement wants to not be famous for cost saving, it's got to take some bold approaches. This is a view that I hold. And one of those bold approaches could be to issue no RFPs. I'm not saying that no one ever issues RFPs, but I'm saying the business users can do that. If we take a look at HR 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they were involved in what we would call tactical events, such as recruiting, such as potentially performance management. And what they did was that they realized actually technology is going to come along and do all those things, which it does. It absolutely does now. And so they pushed that tactical stuff back towards the cost center manager. There's lots of sourcing that the reality is tactical. I have a little thing that says if you've got to put the word strategic before something, it's not strategic.
Yeah, I take that point.
Yeah, because you're giving it a label that it shouldn't actually need. It's just strategic. It's like sticking a word before unique. Unique means one of a kind. It doesn't have to be really unique. It just means it's one of a kind. Sourcing can be strategic, but labeling it strategic means that it probably isn't.
And that's a really good point, because I have heard these kinds of conversations about sticking the word strategic in there rather than operational or something just recently. So and
there's nothing wrong with sourcing. There's nothing wrong with RFPs. There's nothing wrong with that. My point is, if we want to concentrate on the things where we think we can add significantly more value, then we need to actually do the things that can add significantly more value and let go of the things that we don't. And some of those things are running sourcing campaigns. And I know many organizations have got thresholds. My 5-year vision would be remove the threshold. Turn and say, no, all RFPs, the goal is in 5 years' time, all RFPs are run by the business, and we put technology in there that helps them run them. We put the policy in the process. Let me tell you, on user experience, I've just done a piece of research, and it identified the user experience was a key driver of digital transformation. And then I asked the question, so what is it about user experience? And the answer came back, it's people. It's actually about relationship and alignment with organizations. It's not, the technology's got to play with it. The lowest answer was policy.
Right.
The lowest answer about improving user experience was policy. Yeah, a lot of the time we talk about we've got to get the policy right. No, we don't. We have to get the relationships right. We have to get the alignment with the business right. That's what we've got to get right if we want people to really use our services and recognize what we do. So for me, a lot of it is if we want to do something different, we have to let go of the things that we've been doing. And part of that is to have this holistic view of spend management and recognize actually where we can add value is not running RFPs. Where we can add value is so deeply understanding. This is what category management done well is having a forward-looking view as to what things are impacting this category, what it means for this category, and bringing that to our business partner, bringing that to our, if we've got business partnering, which is what HR do, they have the business partner now that helps organizations set strategy, is bringing that to these business partners, bringing that to the users and helping them set their acquisition strategy, helping them think about what it means. And then, maybe it's a case of, well, we're going to have to do something so strategic in the market, like bring a new supplier in. How are we going to bring a new supplier? You're not going to bring a new supplier in through a tender.
No.
You're going to bring a new supplier because you're going
especially
to be
a restricted tender where you already know everybody.
So I think we have to do something fundamentally different, and that's why I say let's set some big goals of no tenders. Let's set another goal of not measuring cost savings.
That's crazy.
Let's set those goals, because if we want to do something different, if we want to measure the impact of what we do, and we want to be famous for something that's not cost savings, then stop measuring it.
Yeah. Well, that's
that's
radical.
Start measuring your contribution to revenue.
Right. Yeah, that's I remember you or somebody talking about that. That's kind of a new frontier for procurement. So that's
let's measure the business value that we bring, because the risk is that, and I work for a technology company, so I see what's coming from a technology perspective. The risk is that, in the same way, how many procurement teams now convert requisitions to purchase orders?
Well, I don't think that's what we do in the procurement team, is it?
No, I don't think it is. It's done automatically. It's done by technology.
100%. Yeah.
I would suggest that it's going to go the same way.
The same way with sourcing. Yeah.
But understanding the supply base, understanding the relationship, having a deep understanding of what impacts these things are happening. Take a good example is Toyota, actually. The doyen, if you like, of lean manufacturing, of just in time, of holding no stock. After the Fukushima earthquake, they took a look back and went, hang on a minute, if there's a shortage of semiconductors, we've got a massive issue. So why are we keeping a weak supply of semiconductors?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a minute. And they basically they restructured their entire inventory management system because they started to scenario plan. Now, if you want time to scenario plan, you can't be running a tender.
No. And they were like the kings of just in time, weren't they? But now it's a whole different philosophy with different,
They've got a
different world situations.
I was at an event in Tokyo a few years ago, and one of the, and it being translated because I can't speak Japanese, but it was one of the speakers turned around and just said, we've missed an opportunity for the last 10 years because we've been so focused on controlling costs and controlling inventory and controlling all those different points that we've missed the opportunity for innovation and supplier management and supplier relationships. We've missed all of that opportunity, and that's where we should be investing our time rather than worrying about essentially tactical things that you can automate.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's really insightful and exciting.
Did you see there was a Harvard Business Review article and it talked about Walmart, and they have put in place negotiation chatbots to carry out negotiations with their suppliers.
Right. Yeah. And wow, and also I've heard of things like, not that particularly, which is amazing, but also the fact that, you can get to things much quicker if you let the computer do the negotiating and say, what's your goal, match up the goals. So that's really happening. As you said, Walmart's doing it already.
And type in, have a look at, and if people haven't, have a look at Chat GPT.
Oh, I wrote my daughter a poem using Chat GPT. Much better than I could have done, I can tell you.
It's very interesting to see that. I mean, there's still issues with it, clearly, but in terms of, you know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying around the technology is going to come and do the stuff anyway. So if procurement wants to save the world, if it can, then it has to kind of change what it does and what it's famous for. That's why I was going to say we've got to set these goals that, if anyone going in now 5 years time should say, I don't want to run RFPs within the sourcing team, that actually I just want to put that to the business. What I want to do is enable the business with the strategies, with understanding what's going on, so they can do that, and so that I can be better aligned with the organization.
Yeah, 100%. No, I love that, Gordon. And look, I know we don't have all day, even though I'd love to chat to you all day because you have so many very interesting and insightful things to say. Maybe I'll have to make a podcast series just with you, Gordon. But look,
I think your viewership or your listenership might go down.
Fair enough. Well, I'd listen anyway. So look, I just want to say, look, is there anything that you wanted to add about, yourself or your life or anything just quickly before we go? Any other key branding platforms or anything? What excites you about coming to work? Anything?
I mean, I think the thing that excites me about coming to work is the fact that I can go and do these research activities, and understand what the future of procurement might look like by listening to a lot of people and carrying out surveys and interpreting what it means and carrying out other specific research pieces. So the exposure to a lot of global thinkers who think differently about both the world and procurement is fantastic. And the fact that I can try and bring that mesh of procurement and technology together, because every function is being impacted from technology. Every single
100%.
function,
minutes,
what it is, direct, indirect, whatever it is, technology is changing the way that we do everything. And so to be at the cutting edge of how procurement and technology meet, for me, that's exciting. It's great to be able to, and again, to influence people that I work with around, actually, this is what procurement really needs. So let's start making sure that this sort of stuff happens. That sort of stuff is fun and exciting.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Gordon. I really appreciated you coming and having a chat with me and sharing some of your insights and your ideas. And I'm sure people will be very interested in hearing this podcast. So thank you so much, and have a lovely weekend, as we've discussed. And I'm sure we will be in touch.
It's good to speak to you and to see you on the teams, and I look forward to seeing you in real life at some point soon.
Yeah. All righty. Okay. Thanks again, Gordon. See you then.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.